fine.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Rocket Tranquility, we copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0, 0.
Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, roger. Go for deploy.
Everybody in the shuttle program, the crew is go for launch.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good evening and welcome to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we have 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut about to suit up for their journey to the International Space Station in just about 4 hours. You are seeing aerial views of what their ride will be today. A brand new Falcon 9 rocket atop. We have the Dragon Endeavour. We are trying to launch these 4 folks again after the launch team chose to stand down from yesterday's attempt due to weather. We had elevated winds along the ascent corridor, but today things are looking much more promising. Today's T0 is 10:53 and 38 seconds Eastern Time, and the weather, while still a watch item, better than yesterday. 75% go here at the launch site, and the conditions have also improved along the ascent corridor. The teams will be keeping a close eye on that corridor through the T-1 hour weather brief. Crew 8 is a continuation of regular crewed flights from U.S. soil to the International Space Station as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. The crew's ride to space, again, what you're seeing there on your screen. Dragon Endeavour will fly for a 5th time with this launch, and over the next 4.5 hours, we will show you all the action live and in 4K. I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and this is the official launch broadcast of Crew 8's launch. And with me to help commentate to what's happening tonight is NASA astronaut Raja Chari.
Hey, thanks, Megan. Glad to be back. So I'll own the first scrub from yesterday. We kind of joked that I may have jinxed it, and I think I may have.
No.
But I think I'm also going to blame my wife a little bit, because it turns out she was not wearing her Crew 8 shirt yesterday. So she's got it on tonight, and so I think now that myself and better half are synced, we're good to go.
Well, some quick background on Raja before we turn our attention to the operations we have before us today. Raja was the commander of NASA's SpaceX Crew 3 mission, which launched back in November 2021. Once aboard the space station, he served as a flight engineer and conducted science experiments and technology demonstrations. He also performed 2 spacewalks. And then after 177 days in orbit, he and his crew, as you can see here, splashed down off the coast of Tampa, Florida. And then in March 2023, 1 year ago yesterday, Raja watched his first launch from the ground while co-hosting our Crew 6 launch broadcast, and we are, of course, happy to have you back for Crew 8.
And happy to be here and still going for 3 in a row. So like you mentioned, got to see my first launch after my first launch being on the rocket, then got to see Crew 6. I got to be lucky enough to come to Crew 7's launch and be with Jasmine Mogbelli, one of my classmates' family for that launch, and then back again for Crew 8 to launch yet another turtle to the International Space Station and keep that string alive.
And that turtle, of course, is Matt.
Yes, it is, yes.
Matt Dominic, the commander. So right now we are T-minus 4 hours, 4 minutes and counting until liftoff. In just about 4 minutes, we expect to take you all inside the suit-up room. So the suit-up room is a room within astronaut crew quarters, and astronaut crew quarters is a section of the historic Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building here at Kennedy. These are doors that lead into that building, the famous doors where astronauts have walked out for their ride to space since Apollo 7, 1968.
Yeah, it's a long, storied place. The building itself, as you mentioned, is actually, as the name would imply, the Operations Checkout Building is actually an operational facility. So it's got both hardware labs and office space, and it's kind of like shaped, if you imagine, like a giant H, and then the sort of lower right part of the H, the third floor, that's the crew quarters section of the building. But the rest of the building has everything from commercial crew, our Dragon and Starliner work going on. There's part of the Orion assembly that goes on there, so it's actually kind of a cool place to walk around. Granted, the crew can't do that in quarantine, but the other folks who are helping with escorts can also check in on some of the different programs going along that are happening here at Kennedy Space Center, so it's a nice consolidated place to be. And then in those crew quarters, they also have work facilities, a small gym, because when you're in quarantine, you don't have the option to leave, so it's basically a self-contained hotel with everything you would need to be able to be there for the days prior to launch.
Yeah, talk to me about how the crew has been in quarantine, living at crew quarters now for 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, so they actually start soft quarantine back in Houston. So they and then any of the members of the immediate family who we'll see later on tonight that go into quarantine with them, that starts back in Houston. And then when it gets closer to launch, they fly down to Kennedy and then move into the actual, what they call hard quarantine at the ONC building in the crew quarters. And from that point on, they're completely isolated from everyone else. They do some other events. They do the wet dress rehearsal. They'll do some pad tours, things like that. But all those things will always be blocked off from other people or kept in safe distances. And that's all protocols from pre-COVID. So it has nothing to do with just COVID. That's a long history, decades worth of us trying to avoid getting pathogens, viruses, bacteria, really anything that doesn't belong in space other than the human up to the space station.
Right. And now here we are inside the suit-up room where we see our 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut standing, getting ready to get seated in the same configuration of seats that they'll sit in Dragon, right?
Exactly, yeah. So you'll see Matt and Mike are on the top half of the screen, and then Jeanette and Alexander on the bottom half. We're getting to see a little bit more than we did yesterday. So
Yeah.
you saw Alexander kind